Gervonta Davis just posted that he would beat the brakes off of you if you guys fight.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be down. Let's run it. Like, I'll be super, super down. I don't know if
Gervonta needs Jake Paul. Let's be clear, right?
Is there a height limit in boxing?
The fight was supposed to be everything. Jake Paul versus Gervonta Tank Davis, a YouTuber turned boxer facing one of boxing's most feared knockout artists. Netflix had the cameras ready. Miami's Kaseya Center was set. $70 to $90 million was on the table. But then, just 10 days before fight night, everything fell apart. The official story? A domestic violence lawsuit. Tank Davis once again accused of horrific acts against a woman. Most Valuable Promotions pulled the plug, citing ethical concerns. Jake Paul called Davis an actual walking human piece of garbage, and that was that. Case closed, right? Not even close, because when you follow the money, when you dig beneath the surface of press releases and Instagram rants, you discover something far more interesting. This cancellation wasn't just about one lawsuit, it was about empty seats, a fighter who showed up late to his own press conferences, and a much bigger payday that was always lurking in the shadows. If you want the real stories behind boxing's biggest dramas, hit that subscribe button right now.
You know it, just like Mike Tyson, low-key was a disgrace, but we accepted it, but yeah, he was 60 years old. I mean, the casuals don't see the weight difference. They see Jake Paul and Gervonta Davis. Yeah. And if Gervonta Davis doesn't fuck up Jake Paul, they're gonna think Jake Paul is some pound-for-pound champion type of fighter.
Let's start with what everyone knows. On October 30, 2025, a woman named Courtney Russell filed a civil lawsuit against Gervonta Davis in Miami-Dade County. According to court documents, Russell claimed Davis stormed into Tootsie's Cabaret, a strip club in Miami Gardens where she worked, in the early morning hours of October 27th. What allegedly happened next sounds like something from a horror movie. Russell claims Davis grabbed her by the neck, choked her, pushed her, and hit her in the back of the head while his security guards watched. The lawsuit accuses Davis of battery, aggravated battery, false imprisonment, kidnapping, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. But this wasn't an isolated incident. Russell obtained a restraining order detailing a pattern of abuse throughout their 5-month relationship. She claimed Davis had trapped her inside his house on multiple occasions, threatened to slash her tires, and sent text messages saying, "I'm going to kill you." Just weeks earlier in September, another choking incident only stopped when a bodyguard physically intervened. Most Valuable Promotions announced they were launching an investigation on November 1st. By November 4th, the fight was officially canceled. Jake Paul didn't hold back.
You got a mohawk, bro. Gervonta. Remember that. You got a mohawk.
You tattooed your name on your forehead so you wouldn't forget, you dumbass.
That's not my name, dumbass. That's my daughter's name.
On Instagram, he absolutely eviscerated Tank Davis. Gervonta Davis is an actual walking human piece of garbage, Paul wrote. Working with him is an absolute nightmare. The unprofessionalism, the bizarre requests, the showing up hours late to shoots. If you support this man, you support the most vile sin a man can commit. I didn't want to give this woman abuser a platform to grow his fans and to grow his bank account. My company champions women. On the surface, this looks like a principled stand. Jake Paul choosing morality over money, walking away from a $90 million payday to stand with survivors of domestic violence. The boxing media praised him for holding Tank Davis accountable when nobody else would. But was it really that simple? Because here's what the press releases didn't mention. This fight was dying long before Courtney Russell walked into a Miami courthouse.
I want to side bet you. I got Jake winning.
We already side betted though.
We already did. What was the bet?
200.
Let's go 250.
Let's go 500.
The Kaseya Center in Miami holds approximately 19,000 people for boxing events. 3 weeks before fight night, over 6,255 tickets were still unsold. That's only 70% of the arena sold for what was supposed to be one of the biggest boxing spectacles of the year. For context, when Jake Paul fought Mike Tyson at AT&T Stadium, 72,300 fans showed up. The gate revenue hit over $18 million. It was the most streamed sporting event in history with 108 million viewers globally. When Tank Davis fought Lamont Roach Jr. at the Barclays Center, he sold out the venue and generated over $6.5 million. But Jake Paul versus Tank Davis in Miami? Crickets. Not only were thousands of seats remaining unsold, but ticket prices were being slashed desperately. The cheapest seats, originally priced at $223, were cut to $91. Ringside seats were offered at half their value, down to $2,736.
Gervonta, considering that
Gervonta.
Gervonta.
You got a mohawk, bro.
Boxing insider Rick Glaser tweeted, "Tickets for the Tank Davis-Jake Paul boxing exhibition in South Florida on Netflix are absolutely DOA. That's dead on arrival. It proves that this freak show is even too much of a freak show for even the freaks." This was supposed to be a collision between boxing's elite knockout king and the sport's biggest digital disruptor. This was supposed to print money, but Miami, one of America's most vibrant fight markets, was lukewarm at best. The boxing public could smell what was coming from a mile away, and what they smelled was a spectacle that didn't even pretend to be a real fight. Here's something most people don't know. This fight was originally supposed to happen in Atlanta, but then the Georgia State Athletic Commission flat out rejected it. Rick Thompson, chairman of the commission, called the event a money grabber and publicly lambasted the organizers for promoting something that was not what they seemed. The commission understood that putting a 6'1", 199-pound Jake Paul in the ring with a 5'5", 135-pound Tank Davis wasn't a sporting event. It was a circus act.
Gervonta Davis, he's actually really small. Like, when I fought him, like, he's small.
Yeah.
So I just think it's a very unfair fight.
The weight disparity was absurd. That's a 65-pound difference. In traditional boxing, that gap would never be sanctioned. Weight classes exist for a reason: fighter safety. When Georgia rejected the fight, most valuable promotions scrambled to find a new home. They eventually secured approval from the Florida Athletic Commission, but only as a hybrid pro exhibition with strict conditions. Georgia's rejection gave everyone an early warning sign. The boxing establishment was saying this fight didn't pass the smell test, and the public agreed. Those empty seats in Miami told the whole story. Now let's talk about what Jake Paul said in that Instagram post, because buried in his righteous anger was something revealing. "Working with him is an absolute nightmare," Paul wrote. "The unprofessionalism, the bizarre requests, the showing up hours late to shoots." Jake Paul was publicly admitting that Tank Davis was impossible to work with, and if you watch the press conferences, you could see it. At the New York kickoff in September, Tank Davis showed up late. When he finally arrived, he had the energy of someone who'd rather be anywhere else. At the Miami press conference, same thing. Late arrival, minimal engagement, barely any promotion.
No, man. My son name. Hey, again, you got a mohawk. You're a fucking clown.
Jake Paul was doing all the heavy lifting, trying to generate buzz. But Tank looked checked out, like someone going through the motions for a paycheck. Multiple sources close to the promotion admitted that everyone knew about Davis's behavioral issues, his pattern of violence, his history of arrests. But as long as Tank kept winning, the boxing world looked the other way. So here's the question: was Most Valuable Promotions looking for an exit? Was this lawsuit the perfect excuse to walk away from a promotion that was already failing? Now we get to the part nobody's talking about, the elephant in the room, Anthony Joshua. As far back as July 2025, Eddie Hearn, Anthony Joshua's promoter, was publicly discussing an AJ versus Jake Paul fight. In August, Hearn went on TMZ Sports and said there was a very good chance it would happen in early 2026. He called it potentially AJ's biggest payday ever. Hearn admitted he initially thought Jake was just using Joshua's name for publicity, but after conversations with Nakisa Badarian, he realized they were serious. "Oh my god, they actually think they can beat him," Hearn said. The numbers being discussed were astronomical. Some reports suggested the fight could generate a couple $100 million. One source mentioned Joshua could earn over $100 million. This would be the biggest payday of Anthony Joshua's career, bigger than any of his world title fights. In September, Nakisa Badarian confirmed that Most Valuable Promotions had an agreement in principle with Matchroom Boxing. The plan was always for Jake to fight Tank in November, then move to the massive AJ fight in early 2026. But here's where it gets interesting. Eddie Hearn specifically said if Jake Paul lost badly to Tank Davis, the Joshua fight would be off the table. He told Badarian directly, "If Tank, who's 65 pounds lighter, beats Jake badly, how can we justify putting him in the ring with a 6'6", 260-pound former heavyweight world champion?" So Jake had enormous pressure riding on the Tank fight. A bad loss could kill the Anthony Joshua mega fight, but a cancellation? A cancellation that makes Jake look like a principled promoter standing up for women's rights? That keeps all the doors open. Think about it strategically. If Jake fights Tank and loses, the Anthony Joshua payday evaporates. If Jake fights Tank and wins controversially, the boxing world roasts him for beating someone 65 pounds lighter. But if Jake cancels on moral grounds, citing Tank's domestic violence allegations, he looks like the good guy, and the path to Anthony Joshua stays wide open. Less than 24 hours before the official cancellation, Jake Paul tweeted one word: idiot. No context. No explanation. Was he talking about Tank, himself for agreeing to the fight, or dropping a hint about what was coming? Let's follow the money, because numbers don't lie. The Tank Davis fight was projected to pay out approximately $90 million total. Jake was getting $50 million. Tank was getting $40 million. Compare that to the Anthony Joshua fight. Eddie Hearn publicly stated this would be one of the biggest pay-per-view fights in boxing history. The total revenue could approach or exceed $200 million, with Jake potentially earning over $100 million. So if you're Jake Paul, what makes more financial sense? Fighting Tank Davis in a dying promotion with empty seats for $50 million? Or canceling on moral grounds and pivoting to the Anthony Joshua super fight for double or triple the payday? It's not even a close call. Nakisa Bidarian was asked directly by Ariel Helwani whether poor ticket sales played any role in the cancellation. Bidarian refused to answer directly. Instead, he said, "This was going to be a very successful event for us financially," before pivoting to talk about Tank's legal troubles. That's a classic non-answer. A truly successful event doesn't have ticket prices slashed in half 2 weeks before fight night. When your CEO won't give hard numbers, that tells you everything. The truth is, most valuable promotions was staring down a potential disaster. Low attendance would have been humiliating for Jake Paul, who built his brand on spectacle and breaking records. The optics of fighting Tank Davis were becoming increasingly toxic, especially for a promotion that features female boxers like Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor. And hovering in the background was the Anthony Joshua deal, waiting for one wrong move to disappear forever. The lawsuit gave them the perfect exit. In the days following the cancellation, Eddie Hearn confirmed that conversations are continuing. The fight would likely take place in early 2026 in a massive stadium and would be broadcast on Netflix. For Anthony Joshua, it's a fascinating proposition. He's 36 years old, he lost to Daniel Dubois in devastating fashion, and has been out of the ring for over a year. His dream fight against Tyson Fury keeps getting delayed. Joshua needs a big payday, and Jake Paul offers potentially the biggest of his entire career. For Jake Paul, it's the fight that finally legitimizes him. If he somehow pulls off a victory, even against a faded AJ, it changes everything. It moves him from YouTube star turned novelty boxer to someone who beat a legitimate heavyweight champion. And if he loses, he still made over $100 million fighting one of his heroes in front of the world's biggest streaming audience. It's a win-win scenario. So let's bring this full circle. Was the fight canceled because of Courtney Russell's lawsuit and Tank's history of domestic violence? Absolutely. Those allegations are real and serious. But was that the whole story? Not even close. This fight was dying before the lawsuit ever got filed. Georgia boxing officials rejected it as a circus act. Miami ticket sales were disastrous. Tank Davis showed up late to press conferences and was reportedly a nightmare to work with. The boxing public wasn't buying what Jake Paul was selling. And looming in the background was the Anthony Joshua fight, the $200 million fight, the fight that was always the real target. Jake Paul is many things, but he's not stupid. He knows when to cut his losses. He knows when to take an exit ramp that turns a disaster into a victory. The Courtney Russell lawsuit gave him that exit ramp. He took it. And now, instead of fighting a smaller opponent in a half-empty arena, Jake Paul is positioned to fight Anthony Joshua in front of 100 million Netflix viewers for the biggest payday of his career. Was it planned from the beginning? Probably not. But did Jake Paul recognize an opportunity when he saw one and seize it? Absolutely. And that is the real story of why this fight got canceled. If you made it this far, you now know the truth the boxing media doesn't want to tell you. Hit that like button if this opened your eyes, and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories behind the headlines.